Welcome, everyone. We're really glad you're here today. We're recording, as I mentioned, the recording slides and a short survey after will be available. My name is Brandon Dawson. I use he, they pronouns based in Dallas, Texas. I am the Senior Director of States and Advocacy here at Just Solutions, and we're really excited to kick off this webinar series around energy affordability with you all today. As I mentioned, as we get started, feel free to drop your name, organization, and state in the chat. Love seeing folks from all over the country come together and talk about issues that are pressing our communities and making sure that we're in community together as much as possible. Quick note on Just Solutions in case you're not familiar. Just Solutions invests in state-based environmental and justice coalition, environmental and climate justice coalitions, working to advance durable and accountable state climate policy. We support our partners by convening across states to share strategy, replicate models, network. We're providing tailored research, policy, and legal support, and offering educational programming like this series to strengthen state advocacy in real time. Today's webinar is an interconnection of all three of those abilities. We're really excited to connect strategy, policy design, and cross-state learning to best facilitate your needs and what you're seeing in your communities. So this session really launches a four-part deep dive into a core strategy areas within our energy affordability framework, pathways to action, household protections, utility reform and accountability, decarbonization, and funding and finance. Each session is designed to combine a national landscape view of what's happening on these issues, and then a state campaign example, both successful, also lessons learned, and then a policy design lens to really think about what resources are out there to cover the issue and potentially replicate in your region, advocate as accordingly. And then lastly, time for regional strategy exchange. So really understanding what's going on in your region, what worked, what didn't, make connections, do some networking, and we'll do those in breakouts according to region later on in the webinar. Today, we're focusing on household protections, what they look like across states, how they function in practice, and what makes them durable. We're really excited to really think about what actually reduces energy burden risk over time and what tends to keep people cycling through emergency aid. That's a key question that we're going to talk about today and how folks can develop solutions to respond to that question appropriately. Next slide, please. So here's how we'll move through the next 90 minutes. We'll start with some framing that my colleague Crystal, one of our state strategists, will use to ground us in why household protections matter and how to think about reliability and release and durability as well. Then we'll hear a national perspective from John Howat at National Consumer Law Center, a state advocacy perspective from Amanda Roberts at Michigan Climate Action Network, and then our research and policy director, senior director, Elena Krieger, will walk us through some policy design mechanisms that you can find through our resources, including the Energy Affordability Policy Library on Just Solutions website. After that, we'll move into the breakouts and apply this to your state context, and then we'll follow in and closing out with some Q&A and closing reflections. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Crystal Bernard, who will lead us through some grounding exercises.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Like Brandon said, I'm Crystal Bernard, and I'm the state strategist here at Just Solutions. My pronouns are she, her, and I am based in Detroit. And so I'm happy to be here at our first strategy session in our energy affordability webinar series. So I wanted to open up with kind of this baseline of why household protections matter. Why did we start with this? A big part is that we understand that baseline safeguards as far as household protection exist in most states. So those are things like limits on shutoffs, billing arrangements, deferred payment agreements, right to dispute. A lot of these baseline safeguards exist in a lot of states. However, a lot of these protections aren't necessarily dealing with the structural aspects of energy affordability in the first place. And so we wanted to really create this course and bring some speakers in, as well as offer opportunity for y'all to share insights from the work that y'all are doing to figure out like what are the scope of some of these safeguards? How are they consistently or inconsistently enforced? what can we figure out about that variation when we think about designing a campaign or a policy or regulatory action around some of these things? Um, and, how can we understand the question of durability as it relates to household protections? Because we understand that energy relief, energy affordability relief programs and protections are important and they respond to crisis and they can keep folks connected, right? However, how can we expand that, make it more durable so we can reduce exposure on the front end? And so, yeah, we're really excited. Like Brandon said, we have some national and state perspective that we'll be hearing from, and we also want you all to talk and share insights horizontally. One thing I'll say is that these sessions are recorded. However, the Q&A and the breakout group discussions will not be recorded. So we really want to encourage, candid conversation, what's working, what's not, and figure out how we can support. Thanks. So next up, I want to introduce John Howat with the National Consumer Law Center, and he will be speaking about household protections from a national perspective, and I'll let him further introduce himself. So, John, over to you.
Oh, there we go. Hello, and my name is John Howat. I'm a policy analyst at National Consumer Law Center based in Boston. Um, NCLC is a law and policy advocacy group that works on a whole range of issues of importance to households with lower incomes across the country. Um, there are 5 of us there that work on energy and utility issues primarily. And I've been there for, I don't know, 26 years or so, working on issues related to bill affordability, uh, consumer and household protections, energy efficiency, rate design, and a number of other critical issues. Um, so I really appreciate the invitation to be here with you today. It's great to see this participant list and some old friends, and it's great to be with you all. So thanks very much. I'm going to focus primarily on just some policy and program design issues. I'm going to try to, putting my timer on here, keep it to 13 minutes, which is going to be impossible. Um, but I'm going to give it a try. So let's see now. Let's see if this works. Can you folks see my screen?
Yep, perfect.
Oh, that's great. I'm relieved. Um, Whoops, I shared the wrong one. I beg your pardon. Let me try a different one. And apology for my ineptitude. Okay, let's try this one. No? Yes, jeez.
Nope, this is right.
Is it right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Does it say just solutions or protecting access to utility service?
It says just solutions.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Um, Thought I had this queued up already. All right. So I think we all know home energy prices are really surging right now. Um, Elena just released a great report laying out how prices have changed and they're going up. I've got a little more data here for you from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Just over the last year, home electricity prices have gone up 7.2%, gas prices 6.3%. Um, and I think we all know this is due to a lot of different reasons. Most of them, I think, are related to climate change. And also, of course, the addition of new large loads, but utilities are going bonkers investing in infrastructure, sometimes in the name of resiliency, sometimes in the name of climate mitigation. But even when it's resiliency, it's often climate related. Uh, so I think there's a theme that's running through here now with the potential for supply disruptions, fossil fueled supply disruptions. Households are going to look at more energy price increases in the coming weeks and months. So just by way of lay out a little bit of a policy framework here for this talk. Um, I start with the premise that the existing energy and regulatory systems that are in place right now, first of all, they generate inequities by race and by income uh, in terms of access to essential service. Um, and we need to work together to figure out how to change that. Excuse me. Um, So I think when we're talking about climate related issues and energy security, home energy security, that is, um, that this work and the policies that are needed to address both objectives are not mutually exclusive. And one of the things I really like about Just Solutions is you folks really get that. And you combine, you do a lot of work that touches on both of these just critical policy imperatives. And that's the way we've got to address this transition. Again, the traditional cost of service regulatory model, as it operates today, just doesn't produce the outcomes that we need in both areas. Um, so, with that in mind, I think it's important to consider, for advocates to consider very purposeful actions legislatively and in regulatory arenas. Uh, Good outcomes aren't just going to happen. It has to be purposive. Um, so let's see here. Is this advancing? No. Doggone it. I have a number of slides here that use data from the 2020 Residential Energy Consumption Survey, particularly those variables that have to do with home energy insecurity. And by energy insecurity, I think a lot of us know it means foregoing necessities to pay for energy service or keeping an unhealthy indoor temperature, foregoing medicine, and various other measures of insecurity. And I've got a lot of data here, data sets. I'm not going to go through them all, but we do see through the RECs kind of a linear relationship between energy insecurity and income. We also see disparities by race, with African American and Native American households, Latino households particularly impacted. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about race and disconnections in a moment. We see insecurity by housing tenure, with renters experiencing more insecurity. Census division, I know we're having breakout sessions later, but in the Southeast and the East South Central divisions, we see heightened levels of energy insecurity relative to the other divisions. Housing type, manufactured housing, sometimes called mobile homes, and 2 to 4 unit apartment buildings tend to have households that experience energy insecurity. Important to an energy efficiency discussion, uh, households with low levels of insulation are much more likely to experience insecurity. And I know there's going to be a webinar down the line on energy efficiency and gaining access to those benefits. Uh, for the rest of my talk, I've got a three-legged stool here, um, and it's the legs are needed to hold up energy security, particularly for households without sufficient income to make ends meet anyway. So I'm going to talk about affordable payments, um, household protections, and by the way, I really like your designation, household protections rather than consumer protections. Uh, it's really nice. I'm going to try to change uh, my language there to reflect that. I also want to say a few words about performance-based rate making and how that tool can be used to promote energy security. So with respect to bill affordability programs, there are some key program design objectives that are required for this stuff to work. It's got to serve all the customers who are income eligible to participate. If we have a great program, but it only serves 3% of the eligible population, well, what have we got? Um, so we need to lower participants' energy burdens, home energy burdens to an affordable level. And we could talk for a long time on what an affordable level is. The standard is 6%. In my view, that's much too high. And we can talk more about that later um, because I don't have time to do that right now. Um, there should be a comprehensive addressing of both the current bills and past due bills in the program design. So that means we need arrearage management programs that operate alongside programs that reduce the current bill to an affordable level. And we need a funding mechanism that's sufficient to meet these design objectives, and also it's got to be reliable. One-time infusions of cash from one source or another aren't going to cut it. We need regular streams of funding, and we need efficient, effective program administration, including enrollment protocols that don't set up undue hurdles for folks to get in. Again, this 6% energy burden construct that really is kind of that's accepted as a measure of affordability. I think that's too high because housing costs across the country are going up, other costs are going up, and 6% doesn't mean you're going to be able to afford the rest of the necessities that you're responsible for. And you can look later. I've got some examples of some recent gains in burden-based program design from around the country. I would add to this. Take a look at what's happened. We have a new tiered discount approved in Massachusetts, one in Maryland, all in the last few weeks, and there are many others. So if you're looking for program design models, please feel free to contact me offline. I've got a slide here that lays out the different predominant program design models. There are flat discounts, just flat percentage discounts, percentage of income payment plans, which are based on a specific target burden level, and kind of a hybrid between the two is a tiered discount model. I don't have time to go into the details of each of these, but I can tell you that the PIP model is really that's the way to go if you've got anything to say about it, because as prices and costs go up, a percentage of income payment plan based on an affordable burden level will protect folks going forward. Um, in terms of household protections, uh, of course, there are disconnection limitations. I think in this day and age, we need to be particularly focused on calendar-based and temperature-based protections in the summertime. We're seeing extreme heat where, like never before, for reasons that we're all familiar with. I know there's work going on the West Coast. Other states are looking at extreme heat protections. But while we have pretty good winter-based protections in much of the Midwest and Northeast, we don't have enough in terms of heat-related protections. Um, my alarm is going off. I'm going to try to get rid of that and be very fast here. I also just wanted to mention very quickly that most states have late payment fees. This is just a poor tax. These are not cost-based penalties that people face. It's usually credit card interest, and it's just they far exceed the cost to the utility system of carrying a past due balance, and they just penalize folks who don't have enough money to pay for what they need to pay for every month. And we know from the data that lower income folks and households of color tend to be the folks who are paying these fees. So they're not fair. In Louisiana, we recently got a big victory. Louisiana has the highest late payment fees in the country, which is awful for all kinds of reasons. But we've made some gains, and Entergy Louisiana is vastly reducing their late payment fees. Um, Deferred payment agreements is another area that doesn't really get enough attention. I think these are payment plans. To avoid disconnection, customers are often offered a deferred payment agreement. Well, these are unworkable and just punitive in most states. Um, in Iowa, there's a model whereby the utility is required to take the reasonableness and affordability into account in setting the terms of a payment agreement. And what's more, if the payment agreement initially, if the customer, um, after making a good faith effort to make good on that initial reasonable agreement, the utility has to offer a second one of even more favorable terms. It's tough to enforce this model, but it's the idea of it is let's not be punitive here. Let's try to make it work. And it's a good construct. Security deposits is another growing problem. Utilities have discretion all across the country to limit security deposits or to waive security deposits, but increasingly they are a source of uh, customers not being able to access service. Um, I just, I'm out of time, but I want to spend 2 minutes, if I may, talking about performance-based rate making and affordability metrics. And I won't go through all these slides, but um, I can tell you that in Illinois, we've had some tremendous advances using performance-based rate making. And what we did, we looked at disconnections by zip code in Illinois. And that's another key aspect of advocacy in this field is we need zip code level or census tract level disconnections data and arrearage data, and we don't have it in most parts of the country. So that's an important aspect. But in Illinois, we got it. And what we found out in the ComEd service territory, this is they serve a lot of northern Illinois. The top 20 disconnect zip codes, among those, 13 of them were among the highest households of color and, households of color, the non-white population, basically. So you can see on this slide the yellow column in the middle of this table. These are the disconnection ratios sorted by zip code. So these are the top 20 disconnection zip codes. And you can see the column to the right is percent non-white. And look at all this overlap. So we were able to get approval of a performance metric where ComEd, they can actually make a little money if they reduce disconnects year over year by 10%. 10% each year over a 4-year period. If they do that, they can actually earn a little more profit. If they don't, if they just keep status quo or things get worse, they pay a penalty. Um, so this is an example of kind of a purposive advocacy approach where, this is a racial justice exercise that we undertook. And there's a good commission in Illinois, I'll admit it, but we won. So, I don't know that there are many other models like this around the country, but to use bill assistance, household protections, and performance-based rate making, we do have opportunities to make some change. And I've got some other slides, but I'm way over, and I'm going to stop and look forward to discussion later.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate that information and really excited to dig in more on the potential solutions that you highlighted specifically. Um, the slides will be sent out, just a reminder, so everyone will have opportunity to see those slides that we weren't able to present. But next, we'll be pivoting over to how some of those solutions are showing up in real estate campaigns, and we'll be talking to Amanda Robert from Michigan Climate Action Network, who will highlight the work that they're doing in the state and how you all can be engaged and hear from that. So, Amanda, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you all for having me speak today about the work we've been doing over in Michigan. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully I did this right. And I'll do my best to also try to stay on time. There we go. I'm not at the beginning, of course. Everybody can see my screen, hopefully. And see
Yes.
okay, great. So yeah, like I said, my name is Amanda Robert, and I am with the Michigan Climate Action Network. If you are not familiar with us, we are a statewide organization, really a network of over 180 different organizations, big and small, all throughout the state of Michigan, that either fully focus on climate or environmental work, or just have something in the work they do that focuses on climate or environmental work, so that we can all try to solve this problem together. And we really focus on amplifying, connecting, and supporting the people, organizations, and communities that are demanding urgent, bold, and equitable action on climate. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about I forgot to start my little timer here so I don't go way over. A little bit about our campaign that we ran last year around energy affordability, utility accountability, a ratepayer bill of rights. And we really did it in a block party format. So we tried to have a lot of fun. So just going to go through what we did, how we did it, and kind of the outcomes that we've seen, and maybe how that's kind of taken action and real policy positions and what's been introduced in the state. So this was our Power to the People tour that we did last year. And so it was a series of a series of events throughout our state, everywhere from Sault Ste. Marie in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to Detroit and Highland Park and Kalamazoo. So we really tried to geographically go across our state and be in communities that are very different from one another. And so we use this as a, oop, I must have did that wrong, as a chance to introduce the concept of a ratepayer bill of rights. And we actually used, or what I found that was useful was what was introduced in Iowa around Iowa Energy's idea of what should be a ratepayer bill of rights there. And the idea was we just introduced the concept. This is what it could be. These are the things that exist. And we asked for feedback from communities. What would you like to see? And so in doing this, we also tried to support our member groups really on our grassroots steering committee and base building and other local priorities that they had on their campaigns or within their organizations. And so we use these different events to educate communities both on the idea of a ratepayer bill of rights, but also on false and just energy solutions. And you can go into that more if people would like, and really pushing back against those false solutions and lifting up those just communities focused solutions, and just laid the groundwork for a lot more long-term organizing. And so, like I said, we engage communities all across the state. You've seen probably 11 different events on that campaign flyer. We also do an event focused on protecting the Great Lakes. And so we included that in there and connected the Line 5 pipeline and how that's connected to these energy issues. And then our annual climate summit, of course, we also brought all this into there. But we actually had 9 specific, what we call block parties throughout the state, engaged over 500 residents in all these different communities. And we included art, music, food, and different cultural aspects of each community into these events. So we didn't copy and paste the same event all across the state, but instead worked closely with each member organization to develop something that made sense for their community and what they were already working on and could really meet, connect with them there. Um, okay. And so then, like I was saying, this is really place-based, community-centered approach, um, being, grounded in those local priorities and relationships. I've tried to put some different pictures, and you can see that like we were up next to the water and in Sault Ste. Marie, but also like different communities wanted to do very different things. And we did a Halloween event out in Detroit, so it was a lot of fun to get to know each one of these communities and groups as well and what their priorities were. And being people focused and not people first that goes to the policy instead of the policy first, and really infusing art and music and culture into all of it, and reminding ourselves that we kind of know how to do this and build relationships, and get back to basic organizing principles. Really came up with the idea talking about union house parties, and how we could use that same kind of approach. And so when we went around, we asked for a couple different things. One was we asked the same question in each community. We'll get to that after this. And we also asked for stories, like how was your interaction been with your utility? And I'm not sure about all of the other states, but in Michigan, we have a hodgepodge of utility types, right? So we have our investor-owned utilities in the major metropolitan areas. We also have municipally owned utilities and we have energy co-ops throughout the state. And so it was really interesting because we both heard some of the same things and also very different things depending on the utility type that they had. But some of the themes that we heard in those stories and some of the direct quotes that I've shared here, around outages and safety and having to invest in generators or being cold for days because of ice storms, high cost and affordability are big issues. So, just the cost going up. And we heard regularly the bills are just too damn high. Um, and then access and understanding. So people don't feel like they really even understand what they're being charged for or what it means on their bill. And what they can then do to, if they don't understand what they're being charged for, how can they make a difference in the outcome of that is how a lot of people seem to feel. and then access to being involved in the process. So at like the Michigan Public Service Commission and other places, they feel it's not as accessible as it should be. And so the question that we went around and asked, and you can see here, we just kind of brought this board that our artist and house art and culture advisor helped to create, and we did an art build, more community building with some volunteers to do that. Was what rights do you, so after we introduced the idea of a ratepayer bill of rights, was what rights do you as a utility ratepayers need? And we collected those answers all around the state. And some really key themes came out, affordable, reliable energy for all. Renters came up often. Um, Transparent billing and transparent utility operations, access to clean, community-centered energy solutions. So they felt as though the clean options that are out there weren't really focused on community. And then protections for vulnerable households, low income, medically vulnerable. And we did hear a lot about that, not just being specific to winter months. And then some key insights, of course, that we found. I thought the way that we did this work was important, not just what the outcome of like the feedback we got from people. So reminding ourselves that affordability is about power and not just the prices. So the power that people have to push back, I think, has already been talked about a lot here, and that difference we can make when we come together. The protections that exist are uneven and inaccessible for many, and that really bringing in community voices change the conversation. So I would say like some of the bigger green policy focused organizations have some great solutions, but they don't always meet directly up with everything that we heard in the community, especially when we look at those difference in utility types throughout the state. So, it's thinking about what do ratepayers need that are with a monopoly utility versus an energy co-op or a municipal utility, for instance. And then just some policy recommendations that came directly out of this for us that stood out of all of it were bill transparency and clarity, making sure bills are clear and understandable and itemized, showing how charges are calculated so people really understand. Safe, healthy, and affordable energy, strengthening those protections for shutoffs. Probably, besides bills being too high, no shutoffs was the other number one thing that came out of this. And then, of course, those excessive fees, providing outage compensation and incentivizing energy efficiency, weatherization, and upgrades. And then having equitable community-focused clean energy access for all. So allowing access to things like community solar, microgrids, balcony solar, expanded rooftop, etc. Ensuring that low and moderate income household renters, schools, and small businesses can all participate in that, and supporting community ownership and decision making. And that was a key theme that came up often, was the idea of community ownership around these things. And then, of course, since then, and I forgot to mention a little earlier, it was in one of my slides, but this work was in part be able to be done through a generous grant from the Michigan League of Conservation Voters Education Fund. And so they've continued to work on advocating, really leading the work around advocating for a Michigan Ratepayer Bill of Rights, um, to protect households from high costs and poor service. And so they've supported protections like fair outage compensation, shut-off protections for vulnerable households, community solar. And then we've also seen some regulatory reform at the Michigan Public Service Commission, where they're at least requiring clear notice for proposed rate increases to all consumers, so they can understand a little bit more of the process of that and what's going on. And so this is really just talking about our plans going forward, continuing to advocate for a ratepayer bill of rights around energy affordability as a household issue and a climate justice issue. Community voices shaping utility policy decisions, and meaningful policy change really requires long-term sustained organizing. And so that's why I think so much is important to the way that we're doing this work as well as the outcome of what we're hearing in communities. And so what we have planned is we're continuing to do another Power to the People tour this year. We'll do it from Earth Day to Election Day during those warmer months here in Michigan, really trying to, expand to new communities and issues, connecting affordability, climate, and justice issues all together and showing how it's all the same fight. And then continuing our false versus just energy solutions education series. We're doing that with both webinars and courses in our My Community space that are free and open to the public. And so that's what I've got. I will stop sharing so I can see everybody. And I don't know if we're doing a couple of questions now, if anybody has any, but thank you so much for letting me talk about our work.
Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate you walking us through that. There will be a Q&A after the breakout, so just folks hold on to your questions for a little bit longer, and you'll get a chance to ask those. But right now, we're going to pivot to our my Just Solutions colleague, Senior Director of Research and Policy, Atlanta Krieger, who will be talking about the resources and information that Just Solutions has, kind of touching on this topic, as well as different other ways to think about policy design and mechanisms. So with that, I'll pass it over to Elena.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. And thanks so much, Amanda and John, for talking about the work that you've been doing in each state and across the country. I think it's really it's sort of inspiring and innovative to hear about how to incorporate things like disconnection protections into performance-based rate making and really seeing differences in the impact that you can have. And Amanda incorporating narrative and outreach and how to make sure that you're actually designing policy that's reflective of the needs and the priorities of the communities that you're working with across the entire state. I think what both of you guys touched on is that there are a whole slew of really interrelated measures that we need to think about when we're tackling energy affordability issues. And what we're focusing on in this webinar are those like really immediate household protections, disconnection protections, and low income rates. But I think we've had some chat comments about this too, and those aren't going to systemically bring down bills. So as Brandon mentioned, we'll have a few other webinars coming up in the next 2 months that are going to focus on how to bring down costs and how to incorporate clean energy measures in the household, things like efficiency that will systemically bring down bills over time. So people maybe don't need to have a percentage of income plan because they're using less energy overall and have lower bills to begin with. So what I wanted to share, and apologies if this is a repeat for folks who joined our last affordability webinar, but I wanted to give a quick overview of where to find related resources in Just Solutions Energy Affordability Policy Library. So I'm going to put the link for the library in the chat here, and I'll share my screen and just give like a real quick walkthrough on where to find things like shut-off protections and bill assistance and other options. So can everyone see this all right?
Yep, looks great.
Great. So this is our Energy Affordability Policy Library. This is live. We've got a few dozen policies in here. If you have other ideas, cool examples we should incorporate, we'd love your feedback. We've gotten some great ideas over the last few weeks since we first launched this. And we'll be continuing to add to those as we go. And so within this library, and again, we'll keep this short for now, what you can look at if you want to look at this household protection side is drop down to affordability strategy. We do have things like residential decarbonization, that's efficiency or utility accountability. But if we click on this household protections link here, we'll pull up a bunch of related policies. These are things like arrearage management programs so people can help pay down their bills, utility shut-off protections, a mix of low income rates, percentage of income payment plans, utility bill assistance, bill credits, all different ways to bring down bills and make energy affordable now while we start to work on some of those sort of long-term systemic changes. There are trade-offs in each of these and things that go well or don't go well. So if we click on one of these, and John was talking about percentage of income payment plans, so a link to that one here, we can take a look on why this matters, what the solution is, some key parts of the policy features. What actually makes this effective and equitable? Such as low barriers to enrollment for a percentage of income payment plans. These are requirements that, again, your bills don't exceed a certain threshold, like 4% or 6% of your income. But what we've found across the country is that sometimes there's really high barriers to participation, or there's a limited amount of funding, so that not everybody who needs to enroll actually can. So the impact might be really low. So in each of these policy entries, we've also talked about some of those potential limitations or pitfalls. Some of these are inherent in policy design. Some of these are things to try to think about how to design around in order to avoid and ensure that these measures can positively impact as many people as possible. And then we have a set of complementary policies. So arrears management plans to help people pay for their bills, for example, shut-off protections, and then examples. So this is Colorado. We have an example for New Jersey, but the example for Colorado was that as of a few years ago, those barriers to enrollment were so high that only about 8% of eligible households actually participated. And so there have to be design changes for things like that to make sure that we're actually reaching everybody who needs it. And then finally, at the bottom of each of the entries, we have a series of resources that you can link to that are related. So please feel free to explore these. I think a few folks have talked about other things like utility. If we take a look at utility reform and accountability, there are entries here such as utility billing transparency, which Amanda mentioned was like super important for Michigan households to actually understand what's on their bills and figure out how to manage it and organize around it and bring those bills down. And so you can sort of explore some of those different options, and we'll go into some of these other categories in the upcoming webinars. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm happy to chat one-on-one with anyone who wants to walk through the library or any of the individual policies here. But we want to make sure, since I'm sure some people will drop off at the top of the hour, although we'll keep going, that we have some time for breakouts.